Listen, it's no surprise that our step side OBS is just a little bit ugly. And one of the biggest eyesores, of course, if you don't count the rust, is that we're driving around in a fishbowl. And today we're fixing that. So if you want to learn how to tint from a guy that doesn't know how to tint, sit back, relax, and watch this episode of Slow Car HQ. All right, before we get into any kind of tinting, let's talk materials. You're going to need some window tint. You can get cheap stuff at O'Reilly or Walmart. The general rule of thumb is if you buy cheap stuff, it's going to be really hard to work with. I got some from Tint Depot, but you guys can find stuff online and buy in bulk. It's going to save you guys a lot of money, and you're going to be working with good material. You're going to need glass cleaner so you can actually clean the glass. You don't want any contaminants laying behind the film. You're going to want a heat gun so you can shrink the wrap. You're going to want some soapy water in a spray bottle. This is going to be critical for the application. And then I bought a $10 or $15 kit on Amazon that comes with all different kinds of hard cards and squeegees and razor blades. Super handy and necessary for the job. You're going to need some fresh rags for the cleaning process. And that really should be it. Maybe some other odds and ends, but let's get into it. Okay, guys, here's the deal. I'm a fraudulent, and I already did a window off camera to see if I was even okay enough at this to validate making a video. This window's done, and on camera I think it looks probably pretty good, and it does look pretty good out here too. But let's go over some of the things that I've already learned. I think we did a good job of making sure that the window was clean, which is one of the areas that I messed up last time. We went over it with a razor blade. We went over it with a couple of different squeegees to make sure that we had all the contaminants off of there. And overall, that contributed to helping it lay down pretty nicely. A couple of the things that I can improve on for the other side are cutting along the bottom edge. I did two things wrong. For starters, my cut isn't incredibly straight on the bottom. It did fine on the rest of the arches, but on the bottom it was just a little bit crooked. I thought I could hide that, kind of tucking it into the weather strip on the back side of the glass. However, the biggest mistake that I made was not leaving myself a quarter of an inch of extra film to work with. So there is actually a minuscule gap down here. When I was laying it down, I also went too far up into that weather strip. So I kind of stabbed myself in the back on both ends of that. So on the other side, we're going to leave a little bit of extra film, and we're going to make sure we position it a little bit better so we don't have this gap across the bottom. And look, guys, those are pretty small mistakes. Realistically, this is how the window looks from distance, and this is how it looks prior. I think that's a pretty major improvement. And if you look at it really hyper up close, you're going to be able to see the mistakes. But from distance on this truck, I think it looks pretty good. And just a heads up, guys, the reason that you buy quality tint is because from the outside, it gives a really dark, nice look. But from the inside of the car where you guys are at, you can still have visibility outside of the window. If you're inside the car and it looks completely black outside, that's going to make it really hard for you to drive. So buy quality tint. Okay, and now that I know that I can do an okay enough job to explain this, let's show you guys how we did it on this window. And honestly, I'm still not very good at this, so I'm probably just going to film and do a voiceover.
When you're laying down window tint, it's incredibly important to make sure that you have a clean window to lay this down on. Any kind of dirt or contaminants or hair that are still on the glass is gonna create imperfections when you lay down the tint. So I'm starting off with a glass cleaner. This stuff is foaming and it has alcohol in it, so it's gonna make sure to remove all those components that are on top of the glass. I'm paying special attention to try to get up in the cracks and divots where dirt can get trapped, but make sure you touch the entire window on the front and the back side. I am also choosing to remove this trim piece because it's going to make it easier for us to tuck the tint into the trim, and it gives us an opportunity to clean this area, which probably hasn't been done since the truck rolled off the factory floor. We're not done cleaning yet. I'm taking some soapy water to the outside of the window, then just taking my squeegee, removing it, and this will get off anything that might be left over on the surface. On the inside, I'm taking more soapy water, and I'm paying extra special attention to spray inside the exterior frame of the window. This is a hot spot for dirt to gather, so I want to use the soapy water to clear it. Then, with the soapy water still on the window, we're taking a razor blade. This is not going to scratch the window, just keep it flat with the surface, and we're going to scrub the interior surface of the window. That way, if our glass cleaner and our squeegee missed anything, the razor blade is going to take it off and make sure that we have a crystal clean surface to lay tint down on. Then we're just going to give it one last rundown with some soapy water and the squeegee, and we're going back to the outside of the truck. I hope you guys like Chris Fix because we're using more soapy water. Get the exterior of the window wet, and then you can measure out your tint. What I would actually recommend here after doing this is just measure the window with some measuring tape, and then you can measure your tint that way. Or if you really want to, you can roll it out like I'm doing here to get the size of your workpiece. Make sure your workpiece is bigger than the window because we're going to cut a lot off. Now we got our workpiece cut out. We're going to, yep, you guessed it, get the window wet again, then get the back of the workpiece wet. What you want to do is make sure that you have the protective liner side facing towards yourself so the other side is what's going on the back of the window. Lay this on the exterior of the glass and then just take a hard card and loosely tack it down. It doesn't need to be like vacuum applied to the window, but you do want it to stick in place. This is how we're going to start using the frame of the window to make cuts so we can cut the tint to size. Grab a utility blade, keep it one rung out so that way you don't risk cutting the weather strip or anything behind the window, and just use the frame of the window to trace your cuts. Take your time here because if you do mess up, you're going to need a new workpiece. At this point, I'm going to take the tint off of the window and I'm just going to clean up some of my cuts. Sometimes this stuff will stick, sometimes you won't get it cut all the way through. Clean up your cuts so that you can finalize the workpiece relative to the size of the window. Just like that, we've got our frame cut out. Now we're ready to go inside the cab. Get that window wet with soapy water. You're not going to use too much soap here. And then as you're peeling the liner off of the back of the tint, make sure to spray that as well so it doesn't stick to itself. Then you can put this on the window and just kind of tack it in place. Because of the soapy water, you're going to be able to move this around. And before we start squeegeeing, I'm just positioning the tint exactly where I want it. I'm kind of folding up the edges and pushing them underneath the trim because that's where I want this to sit. That's how we're going to make it stick to the window. And I'm keeping all that soapy water in there so I can still have the freedom to move this around. Really take your time here and figure out how you want the tint to be positioned. Once the tint's positioned where you want it, it really is just as simple as taking your hard card and squeegeeing out the water. I like to start in the very middle, going in a generally downward motion the entire time. I think there are some different ways to do this, but realistically, if you see soap and water, use your squeegee and push it out one of the sides.
Okay, so the second window is done, and we learned a different subset of things. We're always going to keep learning with each window. Here's what I took away from this one. I actually used just a little bit too much material, and that made it a little bit harder to tuck it into the, I keep calling it weather strip. I don't know if that's the exact right term, but tuck it into the material on the backside of the window. I think that pre-shrinking it would have helped with that, but I'm not exactly confident enough to be doing that yet, or confident enough that that's the right answer, mind you. Anyway, there's kind of a happy medium between not cutting enough extra material and cutting just a little bit too much. But nonetheless, this one went on. I also learned that I was using my squeegee to make the initial impression on that tint on that side. It did kind of scratch up the tint just a little bit, so I used my hard card and then a hard card with a felt strip on it, and that treated this tint just a little bit better too. Lastly, I don't know how this happened, but we did get an imperfection in this window. There's something behind the tint. It actually looks like it's more tint. It's really not super visible from this side, but from the other side, if you look for it, you can see it clear as day. So we're going to try to avoid that moving forward. Overall, I think this one looks pretty good, and we learned a little bit more. Let's keep it going. Okay, so the middle window is done. I didn't film it because it was really tricky to get to, and it was also super tricky to actually apply the tint because I had to do it a reverse order, going from the inside since there's a little overhang of the window on the inside of the cab. But overall, I mean, I'm stoked with how that looks. There are imperfections. I have learned a little bit more. I actually did have to do a rework on the middle. I cut the tint wrong and it was too angular and I really couldn't hide it. So I just threw away the workpiece. So another lesson learned, it's more important to do it right than it is to save material. Okay, this stuff is I'd rather get the job done right. So that's what we did. We reran the workpiece and I think it turned out pretty good, especially from distance, which is how you guys see it. Okay, so we're onto the front windows, and I've chosen to take the door panel off. I don't know if this is necessary, but with my level of skill set for tinting, I think this is going to make it easier for us. And it gives us an option to clean back here because this is disgusting. Guys, I don't even know what to say. I've been struggling with this front window, and I ended up scrapping my first workpiece, and I was super careful with the second workpiece, and I got it exactly how I wanted it. And then when I was peeling off the protective film on the back, I let it roll over on itself, and it stuck together. And now I can't use it, so I got to do it all over again. So I'm gonna see you guys when I have that ready. And easy as that, the driver's side is done. More lessons learned on this one. We'll talk about them. We got one to go. Let's do it. All right, and the last window is done. I think it looks great, but the next step is to roll this thing outside and let the sun heat cure this so it can really set in. I'm going to see you guys in a few days, and we'll see how this thing turned out.
Several days later.
Okay, it has been several days. The tint is fully cured. Now we can take a step back, analyze how it laid, analyze our mistakes, and the overall process. But we do have just one problem. I sold the OBS, and we have a video coming on how we sold it, how much we sold it for, and a recap of what we did to the truck, but the OBS is gone. Thankfully, over the last few days, I have spent some time tinting the Monte Carlo, so we can use this as an example to review how we did. I kind of forgot what I had and hadn't recorded, so the timing did just work out that we have the Monte Carlo tinted and we need to finish this video, so let's take a look. We started with the sunroof for a couple of reasons. For starters, it's a big flat panel, so it's like the easiest to tint out of all these windows, and second of all, with just 6 bolts, we could actually remove the sunroof and take it inside, so I could work in an air-conditioned space and just have it a little bit easier to work in instead of having to work up on the car. Overall, this tint laid down pretty well. The biggest issue that I had, which we also had on the rear windows, is that you can't use the outer frame like we do for the other windows because there's an exoskeleton on the bottom of the sunroof. So we actually had to flip this over, lay out our tint from that side, and then lay it on in kind of reverse order. It really benefited us because there is a dark border on the outside here that gave us a little bit of extra leeway for mistakes. So that's why we started with the sunroof, and overall, this turned out pretty well. There's no fingers, there's no bubbles. I'm pretty happy with how this one worked. Then we went to these back windows, and they give us the exact same problem as the sunroof in that the inside of the window is a lot smaller than the outer frame of the window. So this took a lot of extra trimming and cutting, and to be honest, I made a massive mistake right here on both sides. So some light gets through. I've decided I can live with the imperfection because this window was pretty tricky to get done. Overall though, I can't really complain because it does look okay, especially from a few feet away. And it's the rear window, so it's not a huge draw on the car anyway. I'm okay with this. And once we had built up enough confidence doing the OBS, then doing the sunroof, then doing the rear windows, I worked my way to the front windows. And the biggest thing that saved me here was pre-shrinking the film. We didn't have to do this on the OBS because those windows are so flat, but these windows have a natural curvature that you have to pre-shrink the tint to. So when we laid the tint on the outside, we had it all cut to fit. We ran a heat gun on the outside of the window, shrinking that tint. Then we just tacked it down, squeegeed out any kind of fingers or anything like that. That allowed us to fit the workpiece to the curvature of the window and then lay it in on the inside. And it turned out pretty good, especially from where you guys were at. From a few feet away, I think this looks awesome, but don't get me wrong, we did make some mistakes. The way that these mirrors are on the front of the window, it made it really hard to get a utility blade in here to make a clean cut. So I did it okay on the driver's side, but on the passenger side, there's a little bit of an issue on the cut. And then furthermore, on the actual window, if you look really closely, there are some microscopic air bubbles. It's been sitting in the sun for like 3 or 4 days. So I do think that this is cured, unfortunately. I don't think that those air bubbles are going anywhere, but they are still in the tint. So if you guys know anything more about that, let me know, but here you can take a look. And lastly is the rear glass. I didn't do this just simply because I ordered a 24-inch roll of tint and I really need, this is like, I think 33 inches. So I need a 36-inch roll. I'm gonna order one off Amazon with some like mid-grade quality tint and get this back window done. I was initially pretty nervous about this because it's a large window and there is some more aggressive curvature. But after I've learned how to heat shrink properly, I'm really not that worried about it. And furthermore, we do have some kind of natural black lines around the window. That's a good like 6 inches of space right there that we can use to hide any imperfections. So I'm really not that worried about this window. Overall, guys, I am really happy with how this turned out. I am not a great tinter, but I am self-taught and I'm getting a little bit better with each vehicle that we try. So I'm going to keep tinting my vehicles and keep getting just a little bit better. There are some imperfections in this, don't get me wrong, but I have decided that I can live with those. And maybe down the road, if I'm looking for something to do, I can redo a window here or there and try to get a little bit better at it. But for what is realistically the second vehicle that I've ever tried tinting, I think we did a pretty good job here. That said, if you guys have any advice, please let me know. I do want to get really good at this, so leave it in the comments below. We'll talk about it. But overall, especially from distance, I'm pretty happy with the way the Monte Carlo looks. This channel is all about trying new things, failing, learning, getting a little bit better, and making our cars look sick. We've got a lot more planned for the Monte Carlo. We're going to get our Civic back on the road. The OBS is gone, so we're probably going to buy something else. And we've got our 1970 Chevelle that still needs some work. So if that's the kind of stuff you want to see, hit that subscribe to join the next big car channel, Slow Car HQ.